Commander Elena Vasquez walked through the dim corridors of Mining Colony Theta 7 with steady, measured steps. Her boots echoed against the metal flooring. But she wasn't alone. 3 small creatures moved beside her like living shadows, their crystalline fur catching the pale emergency lighting that had been their only illumination for the past 2 weeks. The Kithara cubs were unlike anything in the galactic databases. Their bodies seemed to be made of living crystal, shifting from transparent to opaque as their emotions changed. Right now, they showed streaks of deep blue running through their clear forms, indicating what Elena had learned was contentment mixed with alertness. Commander Vasquez. The voice came from behind her, sharp and authoritative. Elena turned to see Director Harris striding toward them, flanked by 2 security officers. The older man's face was flushed with anger, and his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Director," Elena acknowledged, not moving from her position. The cubs immediately sensed the tension in the air. Their crystal bodies shifted to amber, warning colors, and they positioned themselves protectively around Elena's legs. "I want an explanation," Harris demanded. "These creatures were supposed to be contained in the research facility. Instead, I find reports of them wandering freely through our mining operations, following you like trained pets." Elena remained calm. "They're not pets, Director, and they're not contained because containment was making them sick." "Sick?" One of the security officers, a young man named Peterson, looked skeptical. "They're crystalline beings. Our medical scans show they don't have biological systems that can become ill." "Your medical scans show you don't understand their physiology," Elena corrected. "Kithara need social interaction to maintain their molecular stability. Isolation causes their crystal structure to become brittle and unstable." The largest cub, the one Elena privately called Prism, made a soft chiming sound and gently touched her hand with what passed for a paw. Where crystal met skin, tiny rainbows of light danced through his translucent body. The gesture was clearly affectionate, and just as clearly protective. Director Harris scowled. "Our xenobiologists determined that these specimens don't possess higher intelligence. They're valuable for their unique crystalline properties, but they're still just animals. Your xenobiologists spent exactly 3 days observing them through reinforced barriers," Elena replied, her voice taking on an edge. "They never attempted actual communication or interaction. Because these creatures are potentially dangerous, we lost the entire research team that discovered them." Elena's expression softened slightly. She knew the story well. A routine mining survey had uncovered a hidden cavern system deep in Theta 7's crust, filled with what appeared to be naturally occurring crystal formations. Only when the formations began moving did the survey team realize they had stumbled into a Kithara nesting ground. The adult Kithara had defended their territory with devastating effectiveness. Their crystal bodies could resonate at frequencies that shattered equipment, disrupted electronics, and even caused temporary paralysis in organic beings. By the time backup arrived, the survey team was dead, and the adult Kithara had vanished deeper into the planet's core, leaving behind only 3 cubs. "The adults were protecting their young," Elena said quietly. "If someone had burst into your home and started taking readings on your children, how would you have reacted?" "Elena, that's irrelevant," Harris snapped. "The point is, these creatures are dangerous. They need to be studied under controlled conditions, not treated like house pets." The smallest cub, who Elena called Shimmer, suddenly began changing colors rapidly. Her crystal body flashed through red, orange, and yellow in quick succession before settling on a pulsing purple. Elena had learned to recognize this pattern as extreme agitation. "Something's wrong," Elena said, kneeling down beside Shimmer. "She's detecting something we can't sense." "Dr. Vasquez," Peterson interjected. "This is exactly the kind of unscientific anthropomorphization we're concerned about. You're attributing complex behaviors to simple stimulus response patterns." Elena ignored him, focusing on Shimmer's rapid color changes. Over the past month, she had documented hundreds of different color combinations, each corresponding to specific environmental conditions or emotional states. The pattern Shimmer was displaying now indicated structural instability somewhere in their immediate vicinity. "We need to evacuate this section," Elena announced, standing up quickly. The Cubs are detecting dangerous resonance frequencies in the station's hull. Director Harris's face reddened further. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're making critical operational decisions based on the behavior of unintelligent crystal formations. A low rumbling sound began emanating from deep within the station's structure, so subtle that human ears barely registered it. But all three Cubs reacted immediately, their bodies shifting to bright red and beginning to emit their own harmonic frequencies. They're trying to counteract whatever they're sensing, Elena realized. They're using their resonance abilities to stabilize the structure. The rumbling grew stronger, and several crew members appeared in the corridor, looking around nervously as the deck plates began to vibrate beneath their feet. All stations report. Harris barked into his communicator. Status on structural integrity. The response came back, filled with confusion and concern. Mining operations had detected unusual seismic activity. Engineering reported harmonic vibrations in the station's support framework. The computer systems showed no specific alarms, but multiple minor anomalies were cascading through the facility's monitoring networks. Elena watched the Cubs work together, their crystal bodies resonating in perfect harmony as they projected stabilizing frequencies into the station's structure. Prism positioned himself near the main support beam, his body tuned to match the metal's natural harmonic. Shimmer focused on the atmospheric recycling systems, her high-pitched resonance canceling out dangerous vibrations in the delicate filtration equipment. The third Cub, who Elena called Echo, spread his awareness throughout the surrounding area, monitoring for changes and adjusting the others' frequencies accordingly. Impossible, Peterson whispered, watching the Cubs' coordinated response. They're working as a team. They're solving a problem we didn't even know existed. Quote, the rumbling gradually subsided as the Cubs' intervention took effect. After several tense minutes, the station's systems stabilized completely. The Cubs' colors shifted back to their calm blue patterns, and they gathered around Elena as if seeking reassurance. Report, Harris demanded, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. Structural integrity restored, came the response from engineering. Unknown harmonic interference neutralized. We're still trying to identify the source. Elena knelt down and gently stroked Prism's crystalline surface. The source was probably microfractures in the planet's crust caused by the mining operations. The Cathara Cubs detected the resonance building up in the station's structure and took action to prevent a catastrophic failure. You're saying these creatures saved the station? I'm saying they recognized a threat and chose to protect the community they've become part of, Elena corrected. That's not animal behavior, Director. That's moral reasoning. Harris was quiet for a long moment, his mind clearly racing as he tried to reconcile his assumptions with what he had just witnessed. The Cubs had demonstrated not only intelligence but altruism, working together to protect beings who had shown them nothing but suspicion and hostility. Even if I accept your interpretation, he said finally, it doesn't explain why they follow you specifically. Our reports indicate they refuse to interact with any other personnel. Elena smiled, remembering her first encounter with the Cubs 4 weeks earlier. She had been assigned to the colony as a mining engineer, not a xenobiologist. Her job was to optimize extraction operations, not to study alien life forms. But when she had seen the 3 Cubs huddled together in their sterile containment facility, looking lost and frightened, she couldn't just walk away. They don't follow me, Director, Elena said, echoing the Cubs' soft chiming as they pressed closer to her. They choose to stay with someone who listens to them. Listens to them how? Elena gestured toward the Cubs, who had begun making subtle harmonic sounds among themselves. To untrained ears, it might sound like random crystal resonance. But Elena had spent weeks learning to distinguish between different tones, frequencies, and patterns. They have a complex communication system based on harmonic frequencies, she explained. Each color change is accompanied by specific sound patterns. They're not just reacting to their environment. They're discussing it. Right now, Prism is telling the others about the structural weaknesses he detected in Sector 7. Shimmer is adding information about atmospheric pressure variations. Echo is summarizing their coordinated response. Peterson looked skeptical. You're claiming they have language? I'm claiming they have something more sophisticated than language. They can share sensory data directly through harmonic resonance. When one of them detects something, the others can experience it themselves through synchronized vibration patterns. Elena had discovered this during her second week with the cubs. She had been trying to understand why they became agitated in certain areas of the station when she realized they were responding to structural stress that was completely invisible to human instruments. Their crystalline bodies could sense microvibrations, electromagnetic fluctuations, and harmonic disturbances with incredible precision. More importantly, they could share these perceptions with each other and, to a limited extent, with Elena herself. "Show them," Elena said softly to Prism. The large cub moved to the nearest wall and placed his crystal form against the metal surface. His body began to resonate at a low frequency, and the other cubs joined him. Elena pressed her palm against the wall beside them and felt the vibrations they were creating. Through the harmonic patterns, she could sense things her normal senses missed. Tiny stress fractures in the metal, minute variations in the wall's density, the way sound traveled through the structure, revealing hollow spaces and weak points. "Incredible," Peterson breathed. "They're using echolocation, but through solid matter." "It's more than that," Elena said. "They're creating a three-dimensional map of the station's entire structure. And they're sharing it with each other in real time." Director Harris watched the demonstration with growing amazement and concern. "If they can sense this much detail about our facilities, they know about our mining operations, our security systems, our classified research projects." "Yes," Elena agreed. "And they've chosen to use that knowledge to help us, not harm us." The implications were staggering. The Cathara cubs possessed abilities that could revolutionize mining operations, structural engineering, and materials science. They could detect problems before they became disasters, identify valuable deposits with pinpoint accuracy, and potentially solve technical challenges that had stymied human engineers for decades. But they would only share these abilities with someone they trusted completely. "The question you should be asking," Elena continued, "isn't why they follow me. It's why they're willing to help us at all, considering what we did to their family." The cubs had gradually stopped their harmonic mapping and returned to Elena's side. Their colors had shifted to soft green patterns that Elena had learned, indicated contentment and security. "Over the past month, I've learned that Cathara society is built around cooperation and mutual benefit," Elena explained. "They don't have concepts of ownership or territorial control the way we understand them. Their adults died defending the cubs because protection of the young is their highest priority, not because they were inherently hostile." "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we've been approaching this all wrong. Instead of trying to study them like specimens, we should be building a partnership. They have abilities we need, and we have resources they need. But partnership requires mutual respect and trust." Director Harris looked around at the corridor they were standing in, still vibrating slightly from the cubs' recent intervention. The station was functioning normally only because 3 alien children had chosen to help, despite having every reason to distrust the humans who had destroyed their home. "The colonial administration isn't going to accept partnership with non-human entities," he said finally. "They expect exploitable resources, not negotiating partners." "Then the colonial administration is going to miss the opportunity of a lifetime," Elena replied. "Because these cubs represent something unprecedented. They're proof that intelligence and cooperation can exist in forms we never imagined." On. Echo, the smallest cub, made a soft chiming sound and moved to stand directly in front of Director Harris. The cub's crystal body shifted to a warm golden color as he began producing a complex harmonic pattern. "What's he doing?" Harris asked, his voice uncertain. Elena listened carefully to the harmonic frequencies. "He's offering to show you something. He wants to share his perception of the station with you directly." "Is it safe?" "Physically, yes, but it might change how you see the universe." Elena smiled as she watched Harris struggle with the decision. "The cubs don't offer this kind of trust lightly. If you refuse, they'll probably never approach you again." Director Harris stared down at the small crystalline being who was patiently waiting for his response. Everything in his training told him to maintain professional distance, to treat alien entities as potential threats or resources to be exploited. But the cubs had just saved his station and possibly dozens of lives. They had demonstrated intelligence, altruism, and a willingness to trust despite having every reason for hostility. Slowly, Harris knelt down and placed his hand near Echo's crystal surface. The moment their harmonic fields connected, Harris gasped. Through Echo's senses, he experienced the station as the cubs perceived it. He felt the rhythm of the life support systems, the stress patterns in the hull plating, the electromagnetic signatures of every piece of equipment. He sensed the crew members moving through the corridors, each person's biorhythms and emotional states creating unique harmonic signatures. Most remarkably, he felt the cubs' perspective on the humans around them. There was no hostility, no desire for revenge. Instead, there was curiosity about these strange beings who built such complex structures but seemed unable to sense their own creations properly. There was concern for the humans' safety, worry about their inability to detect structural problems before they became dangerous. And there was hope that perhaps these different forms of intelligence could learn to work together. When the connection ended, Harris sat back heavily, his mind reeling from the experience. "They don't see us as enemies," he said quietly. "Even after everything that happened." "No," Elena confirmed. "They see us as potential partners who just need to learn better communication skills." Harris looked up at Elena with new understanding. "And they follow you because you were the first human to try learning their language instead of forcing them to adapt to ours." Elena nodded. "They don't follow anyone, Director, but they'll work with someone who proves they can be trusted to listen." As they stood in the corridor, the cubs settling into their comfortable traveling formation around Elena, Harris realized that his original question had been completely wrong. The issue wasn't why the cubs followed Elena. The issue was whether humanity was wise enough to follow them into a deeper understanding of intelligence, cooperation, and trust. The cubs were offering a gift. B. Commander Elena Vasquez sat alone in the abandoned observation deck, staring through the reinforced viewport at the scarred landscape of Theta 7. 3 weeks had passed since her first assignment to the mining colony, and she still couldn't shake the memory of what she'd found in the research facility's basement levels. The Cathara cubs had been kept in a sterile white chamber, barely large enough for them to move around. When Elena first saw them, their crystal bodies were completely colorless, like glass sculptures drained of all life. They huddled together in the far corner, making no sounds, showing no interest in the food dispensers or the automated toys that xenobiologists had provided. "They're dying," Elena had told Dr. Brennan, the lead researcher. "Nonsense," Brennan had replied, adjusting his thick glasses. "All their vital signs are stable. Crystal entities don't have the same biological needs as carbon-based life forms." But Elena knew better. She'd spent years working in deep space mining operations, and she'd learned to recognize the signs of creatures under extreme stress. The cubs might not have heartbeats or breathing patterns, but their energy signatures were growing weaker each day. That night, Elena had made a decision that would change everything. She'd bypassed the security locks on the research facility and entered the cubs' chamber alone. The three small beings hadn't moved when she approached. They seemed resigned to whatever fate awaited them, their crystal bodies dim and lifeless. Elena had settled cross-legged on the floor, about 10 feet away from them, and simply waited. For hours, nothing happened. The cubs remained motionless, and Elena sat in patient silence. She'd brought a small, portable device that generated soft harmonic tones, something she'd used in previous mining operations to test acoustic properties of different materials. As dawn broke over Theta 7's surface, Elena activated the device and began cycling through various frequencies. Most produced no response from the cubs, but when she reached a specific resonance pattern in the lower harmonic range, something extraordinary happened. The largest cub's crystal body flickered with the faintest hint of blue light. Elena immediately stopped the frequency and waited. The cub remained still, but she had seen the response. Slowly, carefully, she began experimenting with different tone combinations, watching for any reaction from the crystalline beings. It took 6 hours of patient work before she discovered something remarkable. When she played certain harmonic sequences, the cub's crystal structures would resonate in response. They weren't just hearing the sounds, they were understanding them as a form of communication. "You have language," Elena whispered, amazed. "You understand harmonic patterns as words." Over the following days, Elena returned to the chamber whenever she could slip away from her regular duties. She brought the harmonic device and began what amounted to language lessons, though she was never sure who was teaching whom. The cubs gradually began responding more actively. Their crystal bodies started showing faint colors again, and they began producing their own harmonic frequencies in response to Elena's communications. Each cub had a distinctly different tonal range: Prism's deep resonance, Shimmer's high crystalline notes, and Echo's complex harmonic layers. But the real breakthrough came during Elena's second week of visits. She had been playing a sequence of tones that seemed to indicate greeting or acknowledgement when Prism suddenly moved forward, approaching within a few feet of her position. His crystal body began resonating with a complex pattern that was unlike anything Elena had heard before. As the harmonic frequencies filled the chamber, Elena began to experience something impossible. Through Prism's resonance, she could sense the station's structure around them. She felt the weight of metal and concrete, the vibrations of machinery, the movement of people through distant corridors. "You're sharing your perception with me," Elena breathed, amazed. Prism's colors shifted to warm gold, confirming her understanding. The other cubs approached, adding their own harmonic contributions to the communication. Through their combined resonance, Elena experienced the world through Kithara senses. Everything was alive with vibration and energy. The station's walls told stories of stress and strength. The air currents carried information about atmospheric composition and pressure changes. Even the people moving through the facility created unique harmonic signatures that revealed their emotional states and physical condition. Most remarkably, Elena sensed the cubs' emotional responses to their environment. They weren't just experiencing physical sensations, they were feeling concern for the humans who seemed oblivious to structural problems, frustration with their own captivity, and deep sadness for their lost family. "I'm sorry," Elena whispered, and the cub's harmonics immediately shifted to acknowledge her emotional sincerity. "I'm so sorry about what happened to your parents." The communication session that followed was unlike anything Elena had ever experienced. Through harmonic patterns and shared perception, the cubs told her their story. They had lived deep in Theta 7's crystal caverns, part of a community that experienced the universe through resonance and vibration. Their people were builders, creating vast crystalline structures that could channel and amplify natural energy patterns. They weren't aggressive or territorial, they were artists and engineers who had developed a civilization based on harmony rather than conflict. The mining survey team had burst into their sacred spaces, their equipment generating harsh, discordant frequencies that caused physical pain to the Kithara. When the adults attempted to communicate through harmonic patterns, the humans interpreted their resonance as attacks. The cubs had watched their parents die trying to protect them, not understanding why these strange beings couldn't hear their attempts at peaceful communication. "Your people tried to talk to the miners," Elena realized. "But we couldn't understand. We thought you were being aggressive when you were really trying to ask us to stop." Shimmer's crystal body flashed with rapid color changes that Elena learned indicated deep emotional distress. The memory of that day was traumatic for all three cubs. "You don't trust us," Elena continued, "and you have every right not to." But even as she said it, Elena recognized that something had changed. The cubs had shared their most painful memories with her, shown her their true nature, despite having every reason to remain hidden and defensive. They were offering trust, despite their trauma. Over the following weeks, Elena's relationship with the cubs deepened. She learned that Kithara culture was built around concepts of harmonic resonance not just as communication, but as a way of understanding truth and building relationships. They could sense emotional authenticity through harmonic patterns, making deception virtually impossible in their society. "That's why you respond to me," Elena realized during one of their communication sessions. "You can hear that I'm being honest with you." Prism's warm golden colors confirmed her understanding. The cubs had tested every human they encountered, reading their emotional harmonics to determine trustworthiness. Most people generated patterns of fear, curiosity, or ambition when interacting with the cubs. Elena was the only human whose harmonic signature consistently indicated genuine care and respect, but Elena's unauthorized interactions hadn't gone unnoticed. Dr. Brennan had begun monitoring her activities, and security footage showed her spending hours in the research facility outside normal working periods. Commander Vasquez, Director Harris had called her into his office. "I understand you've been conducting unsupervised research with our specimens." "They're not specimens," Elena replied firmly. "They're intelligent beings who've been traumatized by their captivity. Dr. Brennan's reports indicate you've been interfering with established research protocols." Elena had expected this confrontation. "Dr. Brennan's protocols are based on the assumption that the cubs are unintelligent crystal formations. His research is fundamentally flawed because he's studying them like mineral samples instead of recognizing them as conscious entities." "That's a serious accusation, Commander." "It's an accurate assessment. The cubs have language, emotional responses, and sophisticated understanding of their environment. They've been trying to communicate with us since they arrived, but we've been too focused on studying their physical properties to notice." Director Harris had reviewed the security footage of Elena's sessions with the cubs, noting their dramatic improvement in apparent health and responsiveness. But Colonial Administration guidelines were clear about protocols for handling potentially valuable alien specimens. "Even if I accepted your interpretation," Harris said, "we can't simply change established procedures based on one person's intuition." "Then observe for yourself," Elena suggested. "Come with me to the next communication session. See what they're capable of when they're treated as intelligent beings rather than lab rats." That session had changed everything. When Director Harris witnessed the cubs' sophisticated communication abilities and their willingness to share perception through harmonic resonance, he began to understand that Elena wasn't anthropomorphizing animal behavior, she was documenting first contact with a genuinely alien intelligence. The cubs showed Harris the same harmonic mapping abilities they'd demonstrated to Elena, revealing structural problems in the mining station that human instruments couldn't detect. They identified energy patterns that indicated rich mineral deposits in previously unexplored areas. Most importantly, they demonstrated emotional responses that clearly indicated consciousness, personality, and individual preferences. "How long have you known about their capabilities?" Harris asked as they left the research facility. "About 2 weeks," Elena replied. "But I've suspected their intelligence from the beginning. The way they position themselves, the patterns in their color changes, their responses to different stimuli, none of it fits with simple animal behavior." Dr. Brennan's initial reports classified them as valuable but non-intelligent resources. Dr. Brennan spent 3 days observing them through barriers and assumed their lack of response indicated low intelligence. He never considered that they might be choosing not to interact with someone they perceived as threatening. Over the following days, Elena worked with Harris to develop new protocols for interacting with the cubs. Instead of sterile containment, they created a more comfortable living space that allowed the cubs to move freely and express their natural behaviors. Rather than intrusive medical scanning, they relied on harmonic communication to understand the cubs' physical and emotional needs. The results were immediate and dramatic. The cubs' crystal bodies regained their full color spectrum. They became actively curious about their environment, and they began demonstrating abilities that no one had imagined. They could sense electromagnetic fields and predict equipment failures days before they occurred. They could identify the emotional states of humans from across the station by reading their biorhythmic signatures. Most remarkably, they could work together to create harmonic fields that could strengthen materials, purify atmospheric contaminants, and even accelerate healing in biological tissues. "They're not just intelligent," Elena reported to Harris after a particularly remarkable demonstration. "They're offering to help us. They want to use their abilities to make life better for everyone on the station. Why would they want to help us after what we did to their family?" Elena had asked the cubs the same question through harmonic communication. Their response had been both simple and profound. Cooperation was their natural way of being. They didn't understand concepts like revenge or punishment. When they saw problems that their abilities could solve, helping felt as natural to them as breathing felt to humans. "They see us as potential partners," Elena explained. "Different, but not inferior. They're curious about our technology and our perspective on the universe. They want to learn from us as much as they're willing to teach us. But this revelation created new challenges. If the cubs were truly intelligent beings rather than valuable specimens, what did that mean for the colony's mining operations? What ethical obligations did humanity have toward a species they had accidentally orphaned? The colonial administration won't see it that way, Harris warned. They'll want to maximize the practical benefits of the cubs' abilities. Partnership implies equality, and equal partners have rights. Elena looked through the observation window at the cubs, who were engaged in what appeared to be a complex harmonic conversation among themselves. They were planning something, working together to solve a problem using their unique perception of reality. Then we'll need to prove that partnership produces better results than exploitation, Elena said. These cubs represent an opportunity to learn from a completely different form of intelligence. We can build something together that neither of our species could achieve alone. And if the administration disagrees? Elena watched Prism demonstrate a new harmonic technique to his siblings, his patient teaching style remarkably similar to her own approach with the cubs. They were natural educators, eager to share knowledge and help others understand their perspective. Then we'll learn whether humanity is wise enough to recognize intelligence when it comes in unexpected forms, Elena replied. And whether we're brave enough to admit we don't have all the answers. The cubs had chosen to trust her because she had proven herself worthy of that trust. Now it remained to be seen whether humanity as a whole was ready for the same test. Outside, the scarred landscape of Theta 7 stretched toward the horizon, marked by the mining operations that had brought two species together in tragedy. But in the research facility, 3 orphaned cubs were teaching their human partners that even the greatest losses could lead to unexpected discoveries. The universe was vast and full of different forms of consciousness. Elena was beginning to understand that humanity's greatest strength might not be their technology or their ambition, but their capacity to learn from others and build bridges across the gaps between different ways of thinking. The cubs didn't follow anyone, but they were willing to walk beside those who proved they could listen, learn, and choose cooperation over conquest. And that, Elena realized, might be the most important lesson humanity had ever received. The transport ship Meridian descended through Theta 7's atmosphere, with all the subtlety of a falling asteroid. Commander Elena Vasquez watched from the observation deck as the massive colonial administration vessel settled onto the landing pad, its engines scorching the already damaged surface of the mining colony. "They're early," Director Harris muttered, checking his chronometer. The inspection team wasn't due for another week. Elena didn't reply. She was focused on the 3 Kithara cubs beside her, their crystal bodies shifting rapidly through warning colors. Prism had turned deep red, indicating immediate danger, while Shimmer's rapid flashing between orange and yellow suggested structural instability. Echo's complex color patterns were unlike anything Elena had seen before, a mixture of alarm, determination, and what she'd learned to recognize as protective resolve. "They're detecting something wrong with that ship," Elena said quietly. Through the massive viewport, they watched as the Meridian's boarding ramp lowered and a group of figures emerged. Even from this distance, Elena could see they wore the black uniforms of Colonial Security Division, not the standard inspectors she'd expected. "Elena." Harris's voice was tight with concern. "I need you to take the cubs to the secure research lab. Lock down all access and don't open for anyone except me." "What's happening?" "I just received confirmation codes from Colonial Command. That's not an inspection team. They're here to extract the cubs for military research applications." Elena felt ice form in her stomach. Over the past month, she had submitted detailed reports about the cubs' abilities, hoping to secure better living conditions and research protocols for them. Instead, her documentation of their harmonic mapping and structural analysis capabilities had attracted the attention of military researchers who saw weapons potential in their unique talents. They want to weaponize them, she realized. The harmonic resonance abilities could be used to destroy enemy ships, collapse fortifications, or disable electronic systems across entire battlefields, Harris confirmed grimly. Command wants them transferred to a secure military research facility immediately. The cubs' color patterns intensified, and they began producing urgent harmonic frequencies. Even without their usual communication devices, Elena could sense their distress through the vibrations they were generating. "They understand what's happening," Elena said. "They can read the emotional signatures of the security team from here." Through Prism's enhanced perception, Elena sensed the approaching humans' intentions. There was no curiosity or scientific interest in their harmonic patterns, only cold determination and barely suppressed hostility. The security team saw the cubs as valuable weapons to be collected, not as intelligent beings to be respected. "Elena, you need to move now," Harris urged. "I'll try to delay them with administrative procedures, but they have override authority." Elena knelt down and placed her hands near the cub's crystal surfaces, establishing harmonic contact with all three simultaneously. Through their shared perception, she experienced the station as they sensed it, including the armed security team, now moving through the corridors with weapons drawn and suppression devices designed to contain alien specimens. "There's nowhere to run," Elena realized. "They've positioned guards at every exit, and they have sonic disruptors that will cause the cubs physical pain if they try to resist." But even as Elena spoke, she felt something change in the cubs' harmonic patterns. Instead of fear or resignation, they were generating frequencies that indicated planning and coordination. They were communicating with each other in rapid, complex patterns that Elena could barely follow. Suddenly, Prism moved to the viewport and pressed his crystal body against the reinforced glass. His harmonic resonance penetrated the barrier and spread throughout the station's structure. Within seconds, Shimmer and Echo joined him, their combined frequencies creating something Elena had never experienced before. The cubs were calling for help. Their harmonic message spread through Theta 7's crystal formations, traveling deep into the planet's core where their people had once lived. Elena felt the resonance propagating through kilometers of crystalline structures, carrying information about the cubs' situation and their need for assistance. "What are they doing?" Harris asked, watching the cubs maintain their intense harmonic projection. "They're sending a message to other Kithara," Elena said, amazed. "There are others still alive down there, in the deep caverns." The response came faster than Elena had expected. The station's structure began resonating with answering harmonics. Dozens of them. From crystalline beings hidden in the planet's depths, the adult Kithara had survived the mining accident and retreated to protected areas where humans couldn't reach them. "Elena Vasquez." The voice came from behind them, cold and official. Elena turned to see a tall woman in colonial security blacks, flanked by 6 armed officers. "I'm Director Kane, Special Operations Division. You're interfering with a classified extraction operation." "These cubs are intelligent beings, not military equipment," Elena replied, standing protectively in front of the cubs. "They have rights under the Galactic Sentience Accords. The accords apply to species that have achieved spaceflight capability," Kane replied dismissively. "These specimens are classified as valuable resources discovered on a colonial world." The cubs continued their harmonic projection, but Elena noticed their colors shifting to patterns she'd never seen before. Deep purples shot through with silver streaks. They were preparing for something. "Director Kane," Elena said carefully, "I strongly recommend that you reconsider this operation. The cubs' people are still alive, and they're aware of what's happening." Kane gestured to her team, and 2 officers moved forward with containment devices designed to suppress the cubs' harmonic abilities. "Their people, as you call them, are hiding in inaccessible areas. They pose no threat to this operation." That was when the planet itself began to sing. The harmonic response from the deep Kithara was so powerful that it made the station's entire structure resonate like a massive musical instrument. Every piece of metal, every support beam, every circuit panel became part of an enormous crystalline symphony that Elena felt in her bones. But this wasn't just music, it was communication on a scale Elena hadn't imagined possible. Through the planetary harmonic field, she sensed the presence of hundreds of adult Kithara deep underground, their ancient wisdom and sophisticated technology focused on a single purpose: protecting their cubs. "Impossible," Director Kane breathed, watching her detection equipment register energy patterns beyond its measurement capabilities. "There's no way a pre-industrial species could generate this level of coordinated response." "You're wrong about almost everything," Elena said, feeling the cubs' excitement and relief as they connected with their people. "The Kithara aren't pre-industrial. They're post-industrial. They developed technology based on harmonic resonance rather than mechanical engineering, and they've been listening to everything that's happened since you destroyed their surface settlements. The cubs' communication with the deep Kithara became increasingly complex, sharing everything they had learned about humans during their time on the station. Elena sensed information flowing between the cubs and their people, descriptions of human technology, assessments of individual personalities, and most importantly, the cubs' evaluation of Elena herself. "They're telling them about you," Elena realized, speaking to Harris and Kane. "About how you've treated them, what your intentions are, who can be trusted." Director Kane activated her communicator. "All teams, initiate immediate extraction. Use suppression protocols if necessary." But before her officers could move, the station's systems began responding to the harmonic field in ways no one had anticipated. Lights dimmed and brightened in rhythm with the Kithara communications. Environmental controls adjusted themselves to optimize conditions for crystalline beings. Even the artificial gravity fluctuated as the station's technology resonated with alien harmonics. "They're taking control of our systems," one of Kane's technicians reported with amazement. "But it's not an attack. They're improving them." Elena watched in wonder as the cubs worked with their distant people to demonstrate something incredible. Through harmonic resonance, the Kithara could interface directly with human technology, optimizing performance and correcting flaws that human engineers had missed. "This is what partnership looks like," Elena announced to Kane and her team. "Not exploitation of resources, but cooperation between different forms of intelligence." The deep Kithara had begun sharing their own perspective on the situation, and Elena felt their ancient wisdom flowing through the harmonic connections. These beings had existed for millennia, developing technologies and philosophies that humans were only beginning to understand. They had watched the mining colony's arrival with curiosity, not hostility, hoping for peaceful contact between their peoples. The death of the surface Kithara had been a tragedy of miscommunication, but it didn't have to define the relationship between humans and their species. "They're offering us a choice," Elena translated as, "The harmonic patterns conveyed complex concepts. Partnership and mutual benefit, or continued conflict that helps no one." Director Kane was studying her instruments, which showed energy readings that challenged everything she thought she knew about the Kithara's capabilities. "If they have this level of technological sophistication, why haven't they driven us off their planet?" "Because they don't think like us," Elena replied. "They don't see territory as something to be conquered or defended. They see the universe as a vast harmonic system, where different forms of consciousness can contribute unique perspectives and abilities." The cubs had finished their communication with the deep Kithara, and their colors had shifted to warm, confident patterns. Prism approached Elena and made the specific harmonic frequency that meant decision time. Elena knelt down and established contact with all three cubs, feeling their shared perspective on the humans around them. Through their senses, she experienced Kane and her team as beings driven by fear and misunderstanding, but not inherently evil. The cubs had sensed the security team's capacity for learning and growth, even if it was currently overshadowed by their programming and prejudices. "The cubs want to make you an offer," Elena announced, standing up to face Kane directly. "They'll demonstrate their abilities and work with your research teams, but as partners, not specimens. They want to help humans understand harmonic technology and develop new applications together." "And if we refuse?" Elena listened to the subtle harmonics coming from deep underground. "Then they'll withdraw to their deep settlements, and humanity will lose the opportunity to learn from one of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations." Kane was clearly struggling with concepts that challenged everything she'd been taught about alien contact protocols. In her experience, superior species either conquered others or were conquered by them. The idea of genuine partnership between equals was outside her framework. "What guarantees do we have?" Kane asked finally. "How do we know they won't turn their abilities against us?" Prism moved forward and began generating a complex harmonic pattern that Elena had learned was the Kithara equivalent of an oath or binding promise. The other cubs joined him, their combined harmonics creating something that felt like music and ceremony combined. "They're offering what they call harmonic bonding," Elena translated. "It's how their people make agreements that can't be broken. Through shared resonance, both parties can sense each other's true intentions. Deception becomes impossible." "You're asking us to undergo alien mental contact?" I'm asking you to experience trust the way the Kithara understand it, Elena corrected. Not blind faith, but verified honesty through direct harmonic connection. Elena had experienced this kind of bonding with the cubs during their communication sessions. It was profound and unsettling, but also liberating. When harmonic fields synchronized, participants could sense each other's emotional authenticity, making genuine partnership possible. Director Kane looked around at her team, then at Director Harris, who had been quietly observing the entire exchange. Finally, her gaze settled on the cubs, who waited patiently for her decision. If I agree to this, Kane said slowly, what exactly are they offering? The cubs' response came through Elena as harmonic patterns that conveyed complex technological concepts. Harmonic engineering principles that could revolutionize human technology, medical applications that could heal conditions we can't even treat, environmental restoration techniques that could repair damaged worlds, and most importantly, a new way of understanding consciousness and intelligence. Kane was quiet for several minutes, clearly weighing the implications. Her original mission had been to acquire alien weapons technology. Instead, she was being offered something far more valuable, partnership with a species that had solved problems humanity was still struggling with. And they'll only work with Dr. Vasquez? Elena smiled, feeling the cubs' harmonic expressions of affection and trust. They'll work with anyone who proves they can listen and learn. But they choose to stay with people who treat them as equals, not as resources to be exploited. They don't follow anyone, Elena continued, echoing the truth she'd discovered. They partner with individuals who demonstrate wisdom, compassion, and genuine respect for different forms of intelligence. Director Kane slowly removed her sidearm and set it aside. One by one, her security team followed her example. It was a gesture of trust that the cubs immediately recognized, their crystal bodies shifting to welcoming blue-green patterns. Then let's see what we can learn together, Kane said. As Prism approached and began the harmonic bonding process with Director Kane, Elena realized that this moment would be remembered as a turning point in human history. Not the conquest of another species, but the beginning of true partnership with minds that experience the universe in ways humans had never imagined. The cubs had chosen Elena not because she was special, but because she had been wise enough to recognize their specialness first. Now, through patience and trust, that recognition was spreading to others. In the deep caverns below, ancient Kithara sang harmonies of hope and possibility. On the surface, humans and their young crystalline partners began building something unprecedented, a relationship based not on dominance or submission, but on the radical idea that different forms of intelligence could work together to create wonders neither could achieve alone. The cubs didn't follow anyone, but they had shown humanity a path toward a future where following wasn't necessary, where partnership and mutual respect could unlock the true potential of a universe filled with infinite varieties of consciousness. And that, Elena understood, was the most human quality of all. The ability to recognize wisdom wherever it appeared, and the courage to learn from teachers who came in unexpected forms. Beyond measure. But like all the most valuable gifts, it could only be received by those humble enough to admit they still had much to learn.